The Denver Broncos are 8-2 after a win on Thursday Night Football. They barely survived the Las Vegas Raiders, but some bigger concerns are coming out of the victory. We'll break it all down here and more on today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Denver Broncos survive on Thursday Night Football to improve to 8-2 right now, the best record in the NFL. Welcome to another episode, Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you know it's your team every day. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports here. Thanks to all the everydayers out there in Broncos Country. Thanks for tuning in, making us your first listen, however you choose to do so. We appreciate you so much here. As we're going to go through our Broncos post-game recap, we'll take you inside the locker room. We'll hear from players like Alex Singleton, Jonathon Cooper, Mike McGlinchey, and J.K. Dobbins as the Broncos survive on Thursday night. We'll talk about the Broncos defense coming up big again. Once again, the story of this team has been the defense's success so far this season. Plus, we'll dive deeper into some of the issues here, instant reaction after Thursday night on the Broncos offense and Bo Nix, and some of the concerns that are now rearing its head after week 10 of play. Where is the blame to be placed? We'll go through all that and more here on today's episode of the show, brought to you by our friends over there at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Wow, Broncos Country, Thursday Night Football. Typically, we always go into these matchups knowing, hey, short week, you never know what you're going to get. The Broncos coming into this game, they were heavily favored against the Raiders, but it didn't matter because the Broncos came out flat to start this game, and the Raiders, they came out with energy despite the fact that they went to overtime last week that nearly took them all the way to the final seconds of overtime against the Jaguars. And typically, the records don't tend to favor those teams coming off of overtime then going to play a Thursday night game. And the Broncos almost suffered a letdown. One of the stories we've been talking about all season with this team has been the offense, the slow starts, the inconsistencies, the lack of cohesiveness from this unit, penalties. Once again, that almost sunk the Broncos at home on Thursday night in an AFC West divisional game here, but it's the defense that comes up big as the Broncos hold on for a 10-7 victory here. And I always say this, there is this identity problem that we're still trying to figure out with this Broncos team. And look, folks, let's be real. Yes, this is a post-game victory podcast, but we can't ignore the issues that we are seeing right now. And we're going to obviously dive a lot deeper into it as things go about here. But the Broncos offense has some question marks, has some big concerns. And a lot of it is related to Sean Payton. Some of it's related to play calling. Bo Nix is struggling. Bo Nix has had 2 really rough weeks in a row. And folks, I'm not hating on Bo Nix. I want Bo Nix to succeed more than anybody. I like being around Bo. I think Bo has a lot of great traits that are going to make him, I think, a very valuable player. But the Broncos have to do more, and Bo has to do better if this Broncos team is going to go far. If they're going to make a postseason run, it is on Bo. And Bo didn't have his best performance. He looked shaky. He didn't look confident here in Thursday's game. He had a couple of moments, but this is not the standard here for this Broncos offense in what I would deem as their worst offensive performance that we have seen since the Nathaniel Hackett era. And there were even times where the Hackett era offense was better than what we saw on Thursday Night Football here. And I don't know where the reality of this is. I don't know where the blame is to be placed mostly, because I think you can talk about Bo Nix and the blame that he certainly has from playing the quarterback position, some of his decision-making, and obviously we talk about mechanics. Bo has taken a step back in his mechanics from what we saw as a rookie. And look, he's developing still. He's not a finished product. And I want to be very clear about that. While I'm criticizing Bo Nix right now, I still think Bo can be the franchise quarterback here for this team. But a performance like what we saw on Thursday Night Football, it hasn't and isn't inspiring confidence in the fan base in what they're seeing. And Bo has his share of blame to go with that, as does Sean Payton, as does the personnel around Bo on the offensive side of the ball. This is a young football team. They're still developing here, but let's get into some of the key stories here. The Broncos' third down offense, really, it was the end of the game. The Broncos picked up, I think, 2 or 3 big third downs to really just kind of ice the game when the Raiders had no timeouts. They finished 5 of 15 on third down. Before that, it was abysmal. On 7 of their first 11 drives, they had 3 and outs. Think about how crazy that is. 3 plays off the field, and they put the defense in rough position all game long, as did special teams. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But for the Broncos offense, we see them go away consistently from the run. Once again, another game for the second consecutive week in a row where the Broncos go into halftime with more passing attempts than rushing attempts. At one point in the first half, the Broncos had more penalties. I think it was 7 penalties compared to just 3 first downs alone. That right there is not going to win you an AFC championship. That right there could sink you if you start to lose some games and you fall behind inside the AFC West. Now you got a tough matchup coming up against the Chiefs next week. We understand that. But the problem here for this offense is they don't have an identity. They're far too inconsistent. Bo Nix looks like he has lost his confidence. And Sean Payton at times seems like he goes 1 step forward, 2 steps back. There is equal blame to be placed on the offensive operation that we are seeing. And we are 10 weeks into the season, Broncos country. This isn't just like, we hope they're going to buck the trend. Right now, this is the trend for them, and I don't think they're bucking it anytime soon unless they go back to keeping things simple. We had a chance to catch up with Broncos offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey in the locker room after the game. And look, yes, it was a short week, not using that as an excuse, but the Broncos have some issues that they got to correct, and Mike McGlinchey is in agreement.
It is. It's a lot. It's because it feels like you're cramming for a test in 2 days, right? So. It's a little bit more of you don't get as many details, you don't get as many reps, you don't get to see all the film that you like to see throughout the week. But there is a nice payoff at the back end of this, which is 3 days, a mini bye or whatever we call it now, to get our heads right and get our body. Obviously everybody's going to heal up physically, everybody's a professional, and I don't expect anything less than that. But we played a lot of football in the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and it'd be good to get away from it, clear our heads. Sometimes when you're looking at it for so long, you start seeing ghosts a little bit, and we got to clear our heads and make sure we come back with a great game plan against Kansas City to come in next week.
They have to get rid of those ghosts, exercise those demons, you name it. The offense cannot play like this against Kansas City. You cannot play like this in the second half part of your schedule because it can sink you quicker than I think we realize. And look, the Broncos have had some heroics this season. We're not trying to discount that. Bo Nix in the fourth quarter at very big moments this season has come up so big for the Broncos. And yeah, there were some moments here in this game where he did that as well. But the offense, the trend in which they're playing is very concerning. This is going to impact them if they can't figure it out. It almost sunk them on Thursday night at home against a Las Vegas Raiders team. And quite frankly, a bad Las Vegas Raiders defense. Quite frankly, the Broncos offense was worse than how bad the defense was for the Raiders. They came out with their hair on fire here on Thursday night, and Denver almost suffered a letdown at home. We caught up with Broncos running back J.K. Dobbins, who even echoes the same sentiment that the fan base has. We cannot keep playing this way. That's what he had to say in the locker room.
I haven't been a part of like a losing team, right? So all I know is college, high school, NFL. And this is probably the best team I've been on, right? And we owe it to the fan base and we owe it to ourselves to stop playing like how we're playing. We got to do better. Like, we just have to do better because eventually it's going to bite us in the butt. And that's not what I want, and that's not what my teammates want. So we're going to get it fixed.
That's the hope, is that they do get it fixed. And look, J.K. Dobbins has been a big part of the solution. And I think going forward, J.K. Dobbins can be a bigger part of the solution. He is the Energizer Bunny for the Broncos offense. We talk about identity. The run game is the identity. And there were times here in Thursday night's game. Yes, we're complaining a little bit on a victory. We have to talk about these issues. The Broncos abandoned the run, specifically on one drive where they were running it really well with J.K. Dobbins. You get a 3rd-and-1 situation. Sean Payton calls a trick play where he has Bo Nix throw it to Cortland Sutton, who goes 5 yards backwards to try to throw a weird flea flicker type of play, and he loses yards there. You go back 5 when you just needed 1 yard to keep the drive alive when you were running the ball well. That is frustrating. And look, we in the press box, fans were booing so loud, it was shaking the press box a little bit. So this was certainly a concern here for the Broncos. I hate to sound like I'm nitpicking, but Bo Nix has to play better, folks. Bo absolutely does. Nobody wants Bo to succeed more than myself, Sayre, and I know you, the fan base. You want Bo to succeed. When he plays bad, we have to talk about what happens. Shaky mechanics, looks like he doesn't have that confidence that we saw from him last year. And Sean Payton's got to help him out. Sean Payton's got to help this offense out too. All of these things can be true without it being negative or without it being hateful. Broncos country, it's constructive criticism. And the Broncos offense simply can't play the way that they have, or else it will sink their season. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the Broncos defense. They've been carrying the water all year, but on Thursday Night Football, they came up big once again, and they are on a historic pace. We'll break it all down here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's episode of Locked On Broncos is brought to you by friends over there at Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. And at Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. And I said yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint, they make it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same number and contacts. If you're ready to say yes to saying no, make sure you make the switch to Mint Mobile today by going to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. An upfront payment of $45 is required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extras. See Mint Mobile for details. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over there at the Game Time app. And the Game Time has everything that you need, not only for the NFL season, but the NBA season as well. And there's nothing better than being in the stadium or inside of a basketball arena surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, because the app that gives the advantage back to the fans is an app that's worth using. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee, and you'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I'm using Game Time tomorrow night for when the Denver Nuggets host the Indiana Pacers. I'm taking the wife and I out, and I use the Game Time app, and I used promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off of my first purchase here today. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Sean Payton is thanking his lucky stars that Vance Joseph has this Broncos defense playing at a historic rate right now. And the Broncos defense, they're cognizant of some of the offense's struggles. We'll break it all down here on today's Locked On Broncos post-game show here on Friday. A little bit of an extra for you here as you got to go back behind the locker room. We had our squad show last night, so make sure you go check that out. Nick Ferguson and Nilo Piero, myself here. The Broncos squad show every Tuesdays and after games when the Broncos do play here. Let's go through the Broncos defense. We've been saying it all season long. They've been carrying the water for this football team, and they've had moments too where they haven't looked their best. But you know what? When you need them to come up big, they find a way to do just that. And against the Las Vegas Raiders, who obviously put up 29 points last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, they got their top premier weapon back in Brock Bowers. Yes, they traded away Jacoby Myers, but they also had Ashton Genty. The Broncos had some moments in this game where not only did the offense put them in bad positions, but special teams did as well. Jeremy Crawshaw had a rough game. His first handful of punts, was able to iron things out down the stretch as the Broncos were able to hang on for a 10-7 win on Thursday Night Football against the Las Vegas Raiders. But it's this Broncos defense, the contagious energy that this unit certainly has, whereas you see them backed up into some high-pressure situations, they never blink. They never waver. And I think that's one of those things you have to look at to say, okay, what is the identity and the foundation of your team? I think for the Broncos defensively, this is their team. Now, you carry that water for so long, eventually you're going to get tired. Your arms are going to get a little bit heavy. How do you progress into the next step here? This is where the offense has to find a way to reward them, because in this game specifically, the Broncos, they had a blocked punt on special teams that gave the offense the ball inside the red zone. The offense, they went backwards, negative yards, ended up settling for a field goal, luckily, but they couldn't do anything with it. Dondre Tillman comes up with an interception. By the way, he leads the team in INTs right now. Has a great return, sets the Broncos up in great field position, and yet the offense cannot capitalize. So when you look at what this team is doing defensively, they are doing their job. They're doing it to a T, and they are doing it well. and they are getting big stops. I mean, you talk about the historic pace that I was alluding to early on here in this show. This Broncos defense right now, folks, coming into this game, they had 40 sacks, which was 40 sacks through 9 games. Crazy. They had 63 total last year. They finished this game with 6 total sacks, and now they have 46. The next closest team to them is the Detroit Lions, who have 28 sacks. So you have a massive advantage in terms of what your production is doing, and you want your offense to showcase something for it, right? And that's why I think we have to teeter on the conversation here about the Broncos. Yes, they have an 8-2 record right now, best in the NFL as it stands here today. But is this team a true contender? In my opinion, they have the tools to be a contender. They have a contending defense. But the offense, if the offense cannot find a way to reward them to play complementary football, they will not be a Super Bowl contender. And that has nothing to do with the defense. That has everything to do with the offense. And I think it's a sobering conversation that we certainly must have here. This is a defense that got to Geno Smith 6 times on Thursday night. One of them being a huge play by Talanoa Hufanga on 4th down, which gave the Broncos offense their best starting field position of the evening. And that obviously played a factor in some of the offensive struggles because A.J. Cole almost became the MVP of the game for the Las Vegas Raiders, pinning the Broncos inside their own 5-yard line a couple of times. Denver had their work cut out for them in those situations specifically. But the defense at times, especially with Jeremy Crawshaw's shank punts that he had in this game, the defense started inside their own 50-yard line 3 times in this game, and they were able to hold off, right? Because initially after one of those plays, the Broncos defense, they got on a 3rd and 10 play where they're able to get the ball to the running back, and then Ashton Jeanty ended up punching it in from 5 yards out. That was the only touchdown of the game for the Raiders, and that was it for the Raiders. The Broncos defense tightened the grip a little bit, and that, I think, showcases just how resilient this unit is. 6 sacks on the evening. Nick Bonitto, Jonathan Cooper, Inyoma Uwazurike, Talanoa Hufanga, John Franklin Myers, and Malcolm Roach all contributing and chipping in on the action that has the Broncos with 46 sacks right now. They are on pace to shatter that record set by the 1984 Chicago Bears. And look, no Pat Surtain in this game. Thought the Broncos had a pretty good game plan coming out. They just relied on their coverage and communication inside out, mixing it up between zone and man against Brock Bowers and company. You had tip passes that led to picks. The Broncos capitalized defensively on so many opportunities, and they ended up changing the field position game because they were getting after Geno Smith here, holding the Raiders offense to 4-15 on 3rd down, holding them to 10 total first downs. I mean, the Broncos offense, the Raiders offense, they matched 10 total first downs in this game. Both teams, actually, you want to know the stat of the game? Both teams had 11 penalties, and they had 10 total first downs. So they had more penalties than first downs in this game. Unbelievable. That's wild. But major tip of the cap here to the Broncos defense. And we caught up with Broncos linebacker Alex Singleton after the game when talking about like the level of stress. This defense seems to thrive when the pressure is on them the most to make a play, especially when the offense is struggling. Here's what Alex Singleton had to say about the Broncos defense.
We're good. I mean, we got the best defense in the league. We don't care. We're going to just, keep going out on the field, doing our thing, give the offense as many opportunities as we can. But, we know what we have. We just all enjoy playing football.
You could tell that this unit loves playing football. I mean, they're energetic. They're flying around. They trust one another to do each other, to do their job. Defensively, they're the most cohesive unit, I think, that we have seen on this team. The offense, so out of sync. Special teams, so out of sync. The defense is the glue that's holding this whole thing together right now for this Broncos team. And look, I'd say Alex Singleton is very relaxed. I think that there's this sobering reality from Broncos players inside that locker room to understand that the offense, offensive players said it, we can't keep playing this way. But now defensive players are starting to say, this isn't sustainable. Jonathan Cooper, we caught up with him after the Broncos victory on Thursday night.
I think for right now it's sustainable, but we do have to figure it out before we get to the playoffs. We can't be in these back and forth, fourth quarter comebacks, stuff like that. We really have to figure it out, clean up the details, got to minimize our penalties, minimize the mistakes and stuff like that, and just execute even better because, we should have no knock on the Raiders at all. We know we can play better, on both sides of the ball. And, we just have, and I know we will. We're just going to have to pick it up and clean it up before we get to the playoffs.
That's the one thing, too, is if you play like this when you get to the postseason, You're going to get bounced in the first round here. And I think that the players in the locker room know that the defense right now, look, everything's good with the defense. But if the offense, if those struggles continue, I know the offensive players are frustrated. I know fans are frustrated. It's frustrating covering an offense like that. It's offensive football, what we were watching here on Thursday night. But this is something I think you can't let get in between like what you have built inside that locker room, inside from the chemistry and the culture that you have. Because at one point, it's like, you ever see The Departed, Mark Wahlberg? You know, something's going wrong in their operation that they have against Frank Costello. He says, who are you? He says, I'm the guy who's doing his job. You must be the other guy. You don't want that to be the situation here in the Broncos locker room. And look, it's nothing like that. The defensive guys, look, I think at times get frustrated as the game's going on. It's an emotional thing. But they support the offensive guys. The offensive guys are just as frustrated. But they got to find a way to figure it out. And look, there are a lot of warts here. We highlighted some here, Broncos country. But as the team goes forward, as they prepare now for Kansas City and a matchup next week here, what are some of the biggest warts here for this team that must get cleaned up? We'll go through that and more here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's Locked On Broncos is brought to you by our friends over there at Prize Picks. You and I, we make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, the NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action than right now. Because if you haven't tried it, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. They also have the brand new Stacks feature. It's a game changer where you can now pick more on Steph's points, his 3-point shots, and his assists in the same exact lineup. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Plus, this episode is brought to you by our friends over there at Dewar. And I love the pair of Dewar jeans that I have. I wore them to the stadium for Thursday night football. I have their performance denim slim straight jeans, and they're the most comfortable pair of jeans that I own because Dewar jeans, they have 5 times the stretch of traditional denim. They're antibacterial, which means that your jeans, they can stay fresher for longer, so you can wear them more and wash them less. Plus, you stay cool with the CoolMax technology that regulates your body temperature and wicks moisture. Dewar jeans, they feel stretchy without looking stretchy, and that is a must-have. Dewar combines classic jeans wear style with the kind of comfort performance that you get from athletic wear, so you get the best of both worlds. Dewar are pioneers of blending technical innovation with everyday clothing. They invented the original performance denim. Simply put, Dewar makes the world's most comfortable pants without having to sacrifice style. And you can check out Dewar in-store here in Denver. It's at 2621 Larimer Street. Pick up a pair for yourself or as an amazing holiday gift. And mention my promo code LOCKEDONDenver in-store to get 15% off your first order. Or check them out online, shopdeur.com/LockedOnDenver for 15% off. That's shopdeur.com/LockedOnDenver. The Denver Broncos may be 8-2, but there are some warts that need some cosmetic removal. Once again, thank you to everyone in Broncos country, all the everydayers out there for tuning in, making us your first listen, however you choose to do so. We talk about warts in a sense of where there's some ugly portions of this team that need to get corrected, certainly before you get to the postseason. I think one of those things we've talked about is the offense's inconsistency being so far up and down. I think the Broncos have to find a way to step back, simplify the offense, and figure out that their identity. And I don't know. Look, if I'm seeing it, if Broncos fans are seeing it, I know Sean Payton sees it, and I understand Sean wants to prove still that he's got it as a play caller. When you have a 3rd and 1 and you do this fancy play call where you're trying to get it to your receiver who's trying to get depth to drop back to throw a trick play here because Cortland Sutton certainly can throw it, and you lose 5 or 6 yards on that play, it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in the fan base to say, like, hey, Sean, we trust you as a play caller. That was a valid concern, I think, on Thursday Night Football, and certainly it doesn't help Bo Nix, who was already struggling. But the thing here with this team, and this is how you cosmetically remove it, you focus on the run game. Look, J.K. Dobbins is the one guy who's getting things going in the run game. 18 carries for 77 yards for him in this game. He was able to wear out the Raiders' defense late. RJ Harvey, 4 carries for 9 yards. We're not seeing a lot of usage from Harvey as a rusher. So anytime that JK's in, I mean, JK brings, I think, valuable pass protection to the mix. there was a lot of Sayre Bedinger in this game here on Thursday Night Football for the Broncos. And I'll say this respectfully, I'm not sure that is going to be the move that's going to help the Broncos offense find a way to piece together some things. And obviously we're recording this moments after the game has ended here. We got some post locker room footage for you. This is airing on Friday morning for everyone in Broncos country. If you missed our squad show last night, Nick Ferguson, Danilo Piro, myself, we sat down and we did just that. But Sayre Bedinger, he's in because, look, obviously the Broncos trust him in pass protection, passing down situations. I understand that. It hasn't amounted to anything here for Denver. He had 1 target, 0 catches in this game. R.J. Harvey, certainly 3 targets on the evening, 2 catches for 9 yards. RJ can offer so much more than just being a pass catcher out of the backfield. You got to find a way to feed him the rock more, where it's got to be, I think, J.K. Dobbins, 20 carries in a game. R.J. Harvey, 14 to 15. There is a world where I think that is the identity of this team. And when that is working, it opens everything up here for Bo in the offense. Look, the number one thing I'll say about Bo and the cosmetics, like the warts we talk about with Bo, his decision-making has been pretty erratic, especially on deep balls. I mean, his 1 interception that he certainly had that was truly his fault in this game, he's rolling out. Yes, he's trying to evade pressure. He's chucking hey, Troy Franklin's down there somewhere into double coverage. It's intercepted by the safety. That's obviously problematic. And look, I understand, like, Bo's got this chemistry, this connection with Troy. I like that. I think there's value to it. And obviously, they capitalized on a touchdown here on Thursday night. But there's got to be a concerted effort to try to find a way to get Courtland Sutton the ball more. Besides the trick play that we saw here, Courtland Sutton, your number 1 receiver, 4 targets on the day, 3 catches for 24 yards. Troy Franklin, 9 targets in this game. The next guy who was heavily targeted more than anybody was Evan Ingram. He had 5 targets, 2 catches, 12 yards. And obviously, Pat Bryant had 1 catch for 43 yards where Bo made a great play rolling out, using his legs to extend play, to evade pressure, and finding Pat Bryant on that scramble drill there that moved him down into the red zone that ultimately set up the touchdown to Troy Franklin. This team is just trying to do too much offensively, and you got to scale it back. You can get warts removed, but you don't want permanent scarring. And I think for this Broncos offense, they are playing with fire here to the point where they have been struggling. The defense has been carrying the water, but at some point, the defense's arms are going to get tired from carrying those buckets of water, and then it's going to spill and it's going to collapse. And you need the offense at times. There's going to be games, and it could be in the second half schedule. It could be next week against Kansas City. There's going to be games where the defense might struggle, and you need the offense to reward you. And certainly you need special teams. That's another wart here that's got to be addressed from this team. Jeremy Crawshaw, yes, he adjusted late in the game. You cannot afford to play like that on special teams where you have 2 line drive shanks that go 25 yards, 30 yards, and all of a sudden the opposing offense is starting inside the own 50-yard line, and now your defense has their backs against the wall. That's not complimentary football. Special teams and the coaching on the special teams, I will say, is still an issue right now. And the fact that we're sitting here with the Broncos at 8-2, folks, and we're talking about issues, we're talking about warts, it's bittersweet because certainly this team can play better. I am still firm on the stance that this Broncos team has not yet played their best football, at least on offense and special teams. Defensively, that's the standard. They are playing elite level on the defensive side of the ball. This has to change here beginning next week against Kansas City. You have a bye week, and then obviously you have your second half schedule. This cannot be the trend for the next 4 or 5 weeks here, or else it's going to pile on. And you don't want this to happen, especially towards the end of the season. The Broncos are in a great position right now. It's like we're complaining about being spoiled here with an 8-2 team, a winning record, 7 straight games in a row that this team has won. And I don't mean to sound negative. Broncos Country, you know me. I'm never a negative person. I feel like I'm trying to be as realistic as possible here. It's great that they're winning, but you don't want that to be the illusion of saying, hey, an 8-2 team, when you're winning, it covers up all your issues. You're okay with it. These issues are going to prevent the Broncos from reaching their ultimate goal, and that is winning a Super Bowl. Plain and simple. They have the talent. If this offense can play to the standard in which we know that it can, if Bo Nix can go back and find his confidence, reset his mechanics a little bit, and go back to playing like the guy that we saw last year as a rookie, that level of confidence, this team is going to be dangerous. This team is going to be scary. They have a running back in J.K. Dobbins that can open things up. They have talented players. It's just about piecing things together. They haven't found a way to do that consistently, and that has been their problem. If they can overcome that, this team is going to be in a very good spot here, especially when the postseason comes around. But there's a lot of things between now and then that must get cleaned up. And look, Broncos Country, 8-2 is great. Victory Podcast is great. But we have to bring these issues to the forefront here. And hopefully that is what the Broncos can do going forward. But with that said, Broncos Country, that'll wrap up our Friday episode here. Locked On Broncos. Some really cool stuff coming up, though, as the Broncos, they're now replacing their field surface for the Kansas City game in record time. Stay tuned over there at milehighsports.com. I'll have written features up on that. But a big week ahead. It is Chiefs week. Will we see some Broncos key players return to the mix this week? Denver banged up coming out of Thursday Night Football. Jonah Ellis, hamstring injury. Quinn Miners, illness. We'll have you covered all throughout next week here on Locked On Broncos. We'll see you then.